Part 1.
You will hear a man who runs a recruitment agency talking to a young woman looking for a job. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Hello, Edwina, is it? Have a seat.
Yes, Edwina. Thanks. I'm looking for a job as a nanny. I like working with children. I talked to you yesterday.
Oh, yes. Well, we covered most of the ground on the phone yesterday. I've got a form I need to complete for my records. So, you're Edwina Riley, and how should we contact you?
Oh, by email. I check it regularly.
What's the address?
It's Edwina, like my name, then R-I, the first 2 letters of my surname, at worldnet.com.
EDWINARI at worldnet.com?
Yes.
Good. And you're from Australia?
Actually, I'm a New Zealander.
Oh, I'm sorry. I bet it's really irritating being told you're an Australian. Like Canadians being asked what part of the States they're from.
I'm used to it. It happens to us all the time.
And now, you said on the phone that you could bring me some references. One from someone who's known you in a professional capacity and one personal one.
Oh, yeah. Here's one from John Keane, who was the manager at the Play Centre in Wellington, where I worked for 3 years after I left school. It's got all his contact details on.
Thank you. So, this was your last employer?
Yes, apart from a bit of waitressing recently, but that was just temporary. I'm sure John will answer any questions if you contact him.
We do run checks, yes. And a personal reference?
Oh, you can contact the friend of my mother's I'm staying with here in London, Eileen Dorsini. She's a professor. She's known me all my life because she used to be our neighbour back home when she was a primary school teacher there. Now she's working here at the Institute of Education.
Oh, good.
I've got her contact details here for you.
Thanks. I think I have some jobs to suit you. Oh, do you have any practical qualifications, by the way? Life-saving, music, anything?
I've got an up-to-date first aid certificate. I did a course when I was working.
That's good. First aid. Anything else?
Well, I've got a driving licence, as I told you on the phone, but that's not special, you said. Almost everyone needs that, really. I've got a sailing qualification. It's a certificate of competence.
So you're a yachtswoman?
I love sailing.
Well, I'll note you have a certificate.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Now, as I mentioned yesterday, there are 3 families, and the job description is much the same for all of them, as I explained. There are a few other things you need to know. Anyway, the first family's here in London.
Yes, I did make a few notes. London, that's the Bentons with 2 children?
Yes, that's right. A girl of 3 and her brother, who's 8. The little boy has a quite serious food allergy. Did you learn about things like that on your course?
Oh, well, I know what to do if someone has an allergic reaction.
Good. But what they mainly want is someone with an interest in sport, as, well, that's the kind of family they are.
Oh, that's okay. I'll enjoy that.
Good. Now, the next people are in the country near Oxford.
Oh, yeah, the Grangers?
Yeah, so they have twin boys of 5 who are a bit of a handful, I suspect. But it's a lovely place, quite a grand house, and the family is extremely welcoming. They keep horses. Do you ride?
I did when I was younger. I like animals generally.
Well, animal lover was their special request, so you'd be fine there. The last family...
Yes?
I don't think I told you. They live in Scotland.
Really? What's their name?
Campbell.
Oh, yes. And they have 4 girls under 10?
That's it. They have a lovely city flat and they own a small island.
Wow!
Actually, you might get on with them very well. They particularly wanted someone who would be prepared to cook when they go camping on the island.
Camping would really suit me, and I'm used to taking my turn doing the food, but it is a long way from London.
Yeah, well, you can think about it. Then, as soon as I've checked your references, we can arrange for you to talk to all of the families.
Right. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'll email you as soon as I can.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a counsellor from Health Services talking about confidence and goal setting. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hello, I'm Jo from Health Services, and I'm pleased to be here talking to you today. You've come here today to learn more about gaining confidence and setting goals. How many of you are truly positive thinkers? Positive thinking is the key to confidence. It doesn't matter whether you are playing a sports match, facing an interview, or preparing for an exam. If you apply positive thinking, you will gain confidence. This is the secret. Positive thought patterns. Positivity leads to confidence, which, in turn, will optimize your performance. What is the one simple mental strategy that all confident people have in common? They concentrate on success. But don't they ever fail? Don't they make mistakes? What happens when things go wrong? The crucial difference is that they don't dwell on failure. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, how else do we learn? Rather than giving up or becoming depressed, the best strategy is to register the mistake, note what went wrong, and determine what would have been a better way to act or what could have been done differently in order to achieve a more successful outcome. Then move on. Yes, erase the negative emotions. Allow those memories of defeat, frustration, or dissatisfaction to fade and move forward. Negativity erodes confidence. You need to put aside your disappointments and focus on successful outcomes. Oh, it's not that easy, I can hear you saying. Well, no, it's not easy to forget failure, but no one ever fails completely, So congratulate yourself on the areas where you did do well. Mentally replay the best bits, even if they're only a small part. Now, there are 2 more things you need to do. Firstly, rehearsal. Yes, you heard me. Rehearsal. Surely only actors in a play need to rehearse their parts? No, the truth is we all need to rehearse. This is a surefire way to build confidence. Before the match, presentation, the exam, or whatever, imagine yourself performing successfully in that particular situation. And here's the second tip. Look confident. That will always give you an extra physiological advantage. So you can see that mind and body work together on this. You have to think and act positively. Let's talk a bit more about how to look confident. If you have to overcome a challenge, get rid of that anxious expression and rigid posture, those downcast eyes and nervous gestures. Even if you don't feel very self-assured, you can still give the appearance of confidence. Stand tall, hold your head up, make full eye contact, and keep an open expression. Replace the frown with a smile if you can manage it. And those hunched shoulders? Relax those shoulder muscles. If you need to, take a deep breath and stretch to release pent-up anxiety and tension. What if you have to make a difficult phone call, for example? Nobody can actually see you, so does it matter what you look like? Yes, it does. Practicing positive body language will help you cross the threshold into a confident mood. Before we move on to talk about goal setting, it may surprise you to know that once you have set a goal in life, the brain responds with a burst of activity, which we experience as, that's right, happiness. And what happens when the goal is achieved? Yes, there is another burst of activity and another feeling of happiness.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
As you can see, the recipe for a happy life is to maintain a positive attitude and keep setting and achieving your goals. So, whatever your goal, whatever it is that you're aiming for, a new job, losing weight, giving up smoking, graduation, you need an appropriate, and by appropriate I mean achievable goal. That's the first step. The next thing to consider is motivation. How do you get going? Well, it's more likely to motivate you if you think of the rewards of success rather than focus on failure or what you might lose. So, you need to establish your incentives. After that, you'll have to work out the various stages and phases that you'll need to go through along the way and prepare for each one of them. If you're not naturally motivated, keep the targets small and achievable. But it really is important to ensure you collect the resources to accomplish the various steps. If you have performed that particular task before, you may already have the resources, or at least know where to get them from. If not, ask someone who has already succeeded. When you have got this far, the next stage is obvious. Yes, you have to take the first step. That's not quite all there is to it, though. The final thing is to remember to keep track of what you've accomplished. In other words, be sure to maintain a progress log. That way you can look back at your previous small successes and watch your progress along the way to achieving your goal.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Part 3. Part 3.
You will hear 3 students discussing a survey they are going to do. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Hi Mel, hi Laura. Sorry I'm a bit late. I got held up by the bus. It just didn't come for ages.
Don't worry, you're only a couple of minutes behind and we've only just been chatting.
Right then. We're here to organize the survey that we're going to do. Mel, you said that you'd discuss with Professor Donald Walker what type of survey we were going to do.
Yes, I spoke to Professor Walker 2 days ago and I told him that the surveys that we were considering were a telephone survey, a street survey and a mail survey. He thought that the phone one would be too expensive for us and the postal one would take too long, so we decided we should do the street one.
I think that's right. If we do the street one, then we can get the whole thing done in one day and we can get on with analysing the results.
Yes, that's right. Now, there are some other things that Professor Walker wanted to know about. How big should the survey be?
Well, the ideal figure for a survey such as this should be about 1,000 people, but that will take us about a month to get that many people, and we just don't have that much time. On the other hand, if we choose just 100 people, the survey won't be statistically significant.
So what about something in the middle? What about 600?
Still too many. That'll take us ages. 400?
Let's split the difference and say 500.
Okay.
Okay.
And how many questions? If there are too many, we'll just have the same problem.
Professor Walker said we should have no more than 10 or people get bored. 10 then?
I think even fewer. 8.
I think 3 fewer again to make sure we can get the numbers done quickly.
Okay, I agree with that.
I'm not sure, but I suppose so.
You now have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now listen to the rest of the discussion and answer questions 28 to 30.
Now, Professor Walker asked where we were going to do the survey.
Does he want to avoid that area then?
Probably. Now, we can either all stay together or split up and do different locations.
Well, if we split up, then I think we've got a better chance of getting more people surveyed.
Yes, I agree with Laura.
Okay. Now, I made a list of the possible locations in Westley where we could station ourselves. There's the town square, at the entrance to the train station, at the university cafeteria, outside Dobbins department store, on the corner of the High Street and College Road, the bus station, and the corner of the High Street and Wilkins Road. What do you think?
I think the square is great, but the people at the train station will be travelling and often in a hurry.
I agree with all that, and I think the bus station will have the same problem as the train station.
Okay, that's those 2 out then.
I think the other ones in town were good too. The cafeteria will have too many students, and that will create too great a bias to our survey. We need a good cross-section of the population, and anywhere too close to the university won't give us that.
Laura's right. So, out of the other town ones, I think that the 2 on the High Street corners are good.
I don't agree. The High Street corner with College Road will be good, but the corner with Wilkins Road is too far out. Not enough people will come by there.
Yes, Mel's right there. We should use Dobbins department store instead.
I can see your point. Okay, that's settled then. All 3 of us will be stationed in town then, but not the Wilkins Road position.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to Part 4. Part 4.
You are going to hear a talk about Oxford and Cambridge universities. You now have some time to read questions 31 to 40.
Good evening, fellow members of the New York Memory Club. Tonight I'm going to talk about those two famous English universities, Oxford and Cambridge. Let's see who wins tonight's big memory prize, which is a barrel of real English beer. OK, here I go. Oxford is the oldest English-speaking university in the world. There is no clear date of when it started, but records show that there was some teaching at Oxford in 1096 AD. And it developed rapidly from 1167, when King Henry II banned English students from attending the University of Paris. In 1188, a historian gave a public lecture to the top Oxford teachers, and in 1190, the first known overseas student arrived. This started the university's tradition of international exchanges. In 1231, the masters, meaning the teachers, were recognised as a universitas, which is Latin for something like a corporation. In the 13th century, conflict between town and gown, meaning ordinary townspeople and students, the students wore gowns, accelerated the establishment of halls of residence like dormitories. This led to the Oxford colleges, of which University, Balliol and Merton colleges, established between 1249 and 1264, are the oldest. Less than a century later, Oxford was the most famous centre of learning in the world. It soon became a centre for religious and political disputes. John Wycliffe, a 14th century master of Balliol College, campaigned for a Bible in common English. The pro-Latin leaders of the Catholic Church in Rome were very angry over this, and even more angry when, in 1530, King Henry VIII forced Oxford University to accept his divorce from Catherine of Aragon. In the late 17th century, the Oxford philosopher John Locke, suspected of treason, was forced to leave England. The 18th century was an age of scientific discovery and religious revival. For example, a geometry professor at Oxford, Edmund Halley, successfully predicted the return of the comet that was named after him. I don't have enough time to tell you much more about Oxford University, but I must tell you that from 1878, academic halls were established for women. Since 1974, only one of Oxford's 39 colleges has not accepted both men and women. St Hilda's College remains the only women's college. Now for a few numbers. The University of Oxford has over 17,000 students. A quarter of these students are from outside the UK, 5% from Asia, 8% from North America, 10% from other European countries, and a few from elsewhere. Oxford University currently has students from more than 130 countries. Over 5,600 students are engaged in postgraduate work. Of these, around 3,000 are working in the arts and humanities. Going back to the colleges, of which there are 39, there are also 7 permanent private halls, which were founded by different Christian denominations, and which still retain their religious character. 30 colleges and all 7 halls admit students for both undergraduate and graduate degrees. 7 other colleges are for graduates only. 1, All Souls, has fellows only, and 1, Kellogg College, specialises in part-time graduate and continuing education. OK, that's enough for Oxford. Now I'll tell you something about Cambridge University. The town itself has its origins in the 1st century BC, when an Iron Age tribe established a settlement on Castle Hill. Later, the Romans took over this site, which was an important strategic point, and was the meeting point of several important Roman roads. Over 1,000 years later, the Normans from France built a castle here. All that remains of this castle nowadays is the small hill that was inside the castle walls. In the 12th century, students attended schools attached to the monasteries and cathedrals, and as universities developed in Italy and France, scholars moved from one centre to another. Some went from Paris to Oxford, and later, in the 13th century, groups arrived in Cambridge. By the middle of the 12th century, there were enough students there for the town to be officially recognised as a seat of learning. In fact, in 1231, King Henry III wrote out orders on how academic life in the town was to be managed. At this time, students had to make their own arrangements for living accommodation. Because it was difficult to find a decent place to live, hostels, like simple small hotels, were set up for them, and from these the college system evolved. The first college was Peterhouse, founded by a bishop, the Bishop of Ely. Just like in Oxford, as the university grew and took over more of the town, there were outbreaks of trouble between town and gown. Well, my time is nearly up, so I'll fast forward to the late 1800s, when two colleges were founded for women, but it was not until the late 1940s that they were awarded degrees. A third women's college was founded in the 1950s, but it was not until the 1970s that other colleges began to accept female students.
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers.